A very good morning to everybody. I, Dr. Rachna Kumari from the Bhavans Vivekananda College of Science, Humanities and Commerce, Sainikpuri, Hyderabad. I take privilege in participating in this National Teachers Organization for Life Sciences, for being a part of the National Teachers Organization for Life Sciences, constituted by Botany for You, the founder member, Pitambar Humne. I extend my grateful thanks to Dr. Pitambar Humne for his extending his cooperation to all the teachers of life sciences and constituting the National Teachers Organization for Life Sciences. It is indeed a good initiative on behalf of the students as well as research scholars as well as the scientific community. Once again, I would not only thank the founder member, the other members of the Botany for You for their constant perseverance in organizing lectures for the benefit of students who are going to pursue their research through the entrance exam, that is CSR UGC NET JRF, and eligibility for lecturership. Before I go on, I would also like to take privilege in thanking the members of the Botany for You, and once again I would like to extend a warm welcome, and I expect that the students get the benefit through these lectures which are organized by the members of Botany for You. Thank you. So today's topic, this is the part 4 of our series of lectures which have been conducted from the month of July, August, September and October. And now this is the 4th part. And in this, I would like to deliver a talk on fine structure analysis of the gene. Well, all of us know that the fine structure analysis of the gene, we understand that the classical concepts of genetics had allowed us to define gene as a fundamental unit of inheritance and that we cannot have the techniques. So our understanding of gene was that it is indeed a fundamental unit of inheritance, but then whenever a recombination occurs, it would always occur between the genes and not within the genes. However, in the year 1950, Seymour Benzer, a scientist who was working with T4 phage, a virus that infects E. coli, through his study, he had further refined the definition of gene by not just saying that it is just a functional unit, but the single unit of inheritance is further divided into smaller subunits. Now, how these smaller subunits behave, what is their function, and what are their properties? So this was the first initiative to understand the fine structure of the gene taken by Seymour Benzer. And his study was based on the crosses involving the different mutant strains of the T4 phages. These T4 phages, we can categorize the phages as the wild type and the mutant. And we understand that whenever a phage infects a bacterial cell, obviously either it would induce lysis or it would undergo a lysogenic pathway. When it is inducing the lytic pathway, the bacterial cell is lysed. So in the near vicinity of these bacterial cells, if they are infected simultaneously by the bacteriophages or the virus particles, the bacterial lawn or the culture of the bacteria will be lysed, and you can see there is a formation of plaques. These plaques are nothing but the killing of the bacterial cells, which were earlier the bacterial colonies. So looking at the plaque morphology, we can identify whether these plaques are formed due to an infection by a wild type phage or due to an infection by the mutant phage. So keeping these 2 points in mind, Benzer has classified looking at the plaque morphology as the wild type phages and the mutant phages. The wild type phages, when they infect, they tend to form large plaques. When they infect, they tend to form large plaques. So the area of the clear zones will be much larger than that of the mutants. What are these mutants? These mutants are depicted by a small letter, small r, which implies R stands for rapid lysis. R stands for rapid lysis. These rapid lysis mutant, as the name suggests, they tend to lyse the phages much more faster than that of the wild type phage. So it means to say that the rate at which these rapid lysis mutants are going to lyse, it will leave larger clear zones or the larger size of the plaques in comparison to the wild type, which will be lysing the bacterial cells at a slower rate. So henceforth, when we would want to identify the plaques, we can visualize them within the culture plates and differentiate depending upon their plaque morphology. So here our plaque morphology serves as the phenotypic or phenotypic observation of whether it was the T4 wild type phage which has infected the bacterial cell or it was the mutant phage which has infected the bacterial cell. So the job of Seymour Benzer was he was trying to look for these R mutants and he classified them with as R1, R2 and R3 depending upon the position of the mutation on the chromosome. How do we know the position of these mutations on the chromosome? So in order to study that, he started working with these T4 phages where he had considered different mutant phages, and we know that they tend to exhibit a mutant phenotype. So let us check out how did he, what kind of an experiment did he design. So here we have image of Seymour Benzer, the pioneer in fine structure analysis of the gene, and this is the structure of the T4 phage. As you can see, it is nothing but a virus particle with a head and its collar, and this is the neck region, and these are the tail fibers. So this is just for your understanding. In the head we have the packaging of the DNA of the bacteriophage. And now we would like to check out, when I was explaining regarding the plaque morphology, I had explained that the wild type plaques which are formed are smaller in size in comparison to the mutant phages. I hope this slide is more clearly visible. Here it shows on the top R2 minus indicating it is a mutant. On the contrary, the left side panel, it indicates R2 plus, which means to say these are the wild type phages which are infecting the E. coli B. lon or E. coli K12 lambda. This slide is of interesting observation. This slide is of interesting observation because when you see that the wild type phages are infecting E. coli B, there is indeed the presence of formation of plaques on both by the wild type as well as the mutants. Look at the diagram C and D at the bottom. It says the wild type plaques, the wild type phage is able to infect a new strain called E. coli K12. On the other hand, on the right side, you do not find the plaques to be present when the E. coli K12 is infected by R2 mutants. So this is a striking observation or a unique observation. Now our job is to find out what is the reason why that these mutants, in spite of their rapid lysis property, are not able to infect the E. coli K12 bacterial cells. So just as I have described, plaques are visible with the naked eye. So hence it can be easily viewed whether the plaques are as a consequence of the infection by the mutant or the wild type. And this wild type plaques, the characteristic feature here is you have to concentrate on plaque morphology. The mutants have large sized plaques with clear margins, in contrast to the wild type where the plaques are very small but with hazy or fuzzy margins. So in summary, now the experiment which goes is, as you have collected or you are trying to infect the wild type phage on 3 bacterial strains. Just check out the left side panel here. It says the 3 bacterial strains which we are going to test are E. coli B, E. coli K12S and E. coli K12 with an integrated lambda genome. That means we have a prophage genome or the phage genome of lambda virus, which is incorporated in E. coli K12 cells. Let us see how are these phages behaving. How is the infection of the wild type phage and how these R2 mutants are infecting. So look at this. This is the wild type, and invariably the wild type phage is able to show the presence of growth irrespective of whether it is E. coli B, E. coli K12S or it is E. coli K12 with the lambda incorporated. All these three have the presence of growth. Now on the right side you can see these mutants. These mutants, they are able to show the presence of growth here. There is a growth, but there is no progeny. That means the bacterial cells are not lysed. And even if they are lysed, the rate of lysis is not so much as compared to E. coli K12S. Now look at this. If the progeny are released, there is a growth here and immediately it is inducing lysis of the bacterial cell, and the bacterial cells which are lysed are releasing the progeny, and these progeny in turn to propagate, what are they going to do? They in turn will affect the nearby vicinity bacterial cells so that the process of lysis is much faster. So you will find extremely large plaques here when the R2 mutants are grown on E. coli 12S. And look at the third observation. The R2 mutants, when infected on E. coli K12 lambda, absolutely there is no growth. That means the mutants are unable to grow or unable to invade the E. coli K12 or rather utilize the services of E. coli K12 lambda. And henceforth, when there is no growth, obviously, absolutely, there are no progeny being produced. So this table will give us a better understanding. So now what are we trying to look for is what is that property that these R2 mutants are unable to grow in E. coli 12 lambda. So to seek an answer for this question, Binzer performed a set of experiments. What are this set of experiments? He isolated R2 mutants that could form plaques on E. coli K12 lambda. Look at this sentence. It is one of the salient features. It says that the R2 mutants could form plaques on E. coli K12 lambda. And it is not a single mutant. Here it is R2 mutants. To map the genes of these R2 mutants, he wanted to know whether the mutants were carrying mutations which were in the same gene or different genes governing the property of rapid lysis. In other words, we would like to know whether the property of rapid lysis is imparted to a single gene or more than one gene. If it is more than one gene, then how many? If it is single gene, then where is the location of these mutations? So hence, to perform complementation test, so he approached to seek an answer for this question, whether the mutations were in the same gene or in different genes. He performed complementation test. Now, what do you understand by complementation test? Complementation test refers to in case there is a mutation in one organism in one gene, if the other complementary copy, as we know that the phenotype is governed phenotypically, or rather, genotypically, if the allele combinations, depending upon the allele combination, if there is a capital A against a small a, then phenotypically it will have the phenotype of capital A. So similarly here, to perform complementation test refers to that a defect in one can be complemented by the normal copy of the gene in the other homologue. The way we see in capital A and small a, though we have the recessive allele as well as the dominant allele, but the recessive allele is masked or it is complemented by the phenotype of capital A. So that is what talks about complementation test. So a defect in one is complemented by the presence of the normal copy in the other. So we need to know whether the two mutations affecting the same trait are in the same gene or different genes. So how did he go about with his experiment was, he selected 4 R2 strains. He has selected 4 R2 strains randomly and then named them as R21, R22, R23, R24. Of these, R21 and R22 are defective for a gene A, and R23 and R24 are defective for gene B, which were used for the study. Now these mutants R21 and R22 mutants had a mutation in the same gene, and when we are trying to use these two mutants together, infect the E. coli K12 lambda, the mutation which is present in this and the mutation which is present in R22, if both of them are carrying mutation in the same region of the gene, it is difficult to complement. On the other hand, if the two R21 and R22 are carrying mutations within the same gene but at different positions or within two different genes, then it can be complemented. So that is what, if you find the presence of plaques. In the previous slide, we have seen that which of the phages are able to infect the E. coli K12 lambda. We said very clearly that only and only the wild type phages can infect E. coli K12 lambda. And what did we do? We are using now two different R2 mutants and trying to check whether this co-infection, we are using two phages, that is the rapid lysis two different mutants to infect the E. coli K12 lambda. So let's go back to the figure number 5 and just check what are our results. So this is the figure number 5 here. So what did we do? We have taken mutant 1 here and R2 mutant 2. This minus indicates there is a mutation, and it is obviously understood every time we represent the genotype of a phage or an organism by plus. It is a clear-cut understanding that it is the wild type. So what did we do? We are using the two different mutants to infect E. coli K12 lambda. Now, just hypothetically presuming this mutation is said to be in this light blue color region, which we are designating it as M1. Similarly, here the mutation R22 is carrying a mutation in this region. And I said this is gene A and this dark blue is gene B. Now, the two mutations R21 and R22, both these mutations are said to be present within the same region of the gene. So, if the process of transcription and translation has to occur, this part of the gene, if I'm using this homolog, will not give me a functional copy. Because this is not giving me a functional copy of this A gene, I would like to go that is there a possibility if I use this DNA strand, the other homolog for gene expression, will I still get a functional copy of gene A? But because the other mutation is somewhere here and this mutation is also in this region, both this, whether I use this homolog or this homolog, there is no complementation. Because there is no complementation, the defect in this should be complemented by this, or vice versa. The defect in this should be complemented by this, but that is not happening. So there is no cell lysis, neither there is any progeny phage which is produced. Look at the right side diagram here. If this was hypothetically presuming if the two mutations were present within the same gene, absolutely it is not possible to have complementation. Now look at this. M1 is shown in this light gray or blue color region, whereas M2 is shown in the dark blue region. And the site of the two mutations are quite distant apart. Though M1 is a mutation in gene A and M2 is a mutation in gene B. So here, in this case, only the functional B gene product is available, but there is no functional gene product for A gene. On this side, the mutation which is present here is complemented by this homolog. So I can get a functional gene product. Similarly, even for the B gene, what are we finding? The mutation in B in the other homolog is being complemented by the normal copy of the other homolog. So hence, in this situation, whenever the two mutations in two different mutants are said to be located in two different genes, A and B, then they complement and can give rise to the wild type and thus can induce cell lysis. The same example is explained here. Whatever we said A and B here, similarly I have depicted here. So this is A and this is the another, both of them, one mutation here in A, another mutation. So both these are allowed to co-infect E. coli K12 lambda. If a co-infection of such mutants yields the presence of plaques in E. coli K12 lambda culture, what does it imply? It simply indicates that the mutation in A gene was complemented by the second mutant here, which is having the functional copy, and the mutation in this which is defective for B, is complemented by the functional copy of this mutant. So hence, our co-infection studies fetches us an information saying that both functional A and B products are present, which will facilitate the formation of wild type plaques on the E. coli K12 lambda, which is what we had defined in the previous slide where we said. So here the mutants R21 and R22 mutants had a mutation in the same gene and on and on co-infection could not form plaques on E. coli K12 lambda, thus indicating because the mutations are in the same position, they cannot be complemented. Before I come back to this slide, let's go back. We will do a little bit further and then relate it to the diagrams. So henceforth, if the two mutations are in two different Phage genes, example, just we discussed capital A and capital B, then on co-infection, it results in the formation of double mutant and wild type. So how did we get those wild type? It isn't that we were taking one homolog, only one gene will be expressed, and the other homolog, the other gene will be expressed. That doesn't happen. It has to be a complete chromosome. And at a given point of time, either this homolog or that homolog, either any one of the homologs is only utilized for gene expression. But there isn't any way which says that one homolog will express one gene, the other homolog will express the other gene. No, that's wrong. So therefore, if the two mutations are in two different Phage genes, then on co-infection, it results in the formation of double mutant and wild type. And formation of wild type plaques on E. coli K12 lambda indicates that there is indeed complementation. So the mutation in gene A is complemented by the mutation which is present in R22, as it has the normal copy of the gene A but is defective for gene B. So once again, to relate this diagram, whatever we discussed in the previous diagram, so this is what we said. The mutation in A is complemented by this, and the mutation in this is complemented by the other one. So just for your reference, I had just gone one slide back so that you can refer. Thus, complementation phenomena is applicable to mutations when they are present in two different genes. So kindly make note of it that complementation is applicable only when the mutations occur or are present in two different genes. And this complementation occurs in the trans and cis configuration. Here in this case, trans refer to if the alleles or if the genes are present in a repulsion phase. And cis configuration refers to if the genes are existing in the coupling phase. So complementation occurs in the trans and cis configuration if the mutations are present in two different genes. Both these configurations will yield the wild type phenotype, provided the two mutations should and must be in two different genes. So however, on the contrary, there is no complementation when mutations are present in cis and trans configuration for a single gene. So what you need to remember here is complementation indeed is occurring, but it will definitely occur irrespective of whether it is trans or the cis configuration, as long as the two mutations were in two different genes. But if the two mutations are in single gene, then there is a variation. Perhaps trans configuration can still yield the presence of complementation, or similarly cis also. But in cis or trans for a single gene, we need to define two terms. Is it a cis heterozygote or a homozygote? Similarly, is it a trans heterozygote or a trans homozygote? So that is more important. So therefore, Benzer concluded that R2 mutations occurred in two different genes named by him as R2A and R2B. And these two genes, what are they doing? Functionally, small r itself represents, we are still talking about the phenotype or the property, what we call it as the rapid lysis. He coined the term cistron for the smallest genetic unit that did not show complementation. So within a gene, how far can there be complementation? So that defines the distance between the two mutations in such a way that if they are present very close by and they are unable to complement, that smallest unit is what is known as the cistron. Hence, if two mutations are present in the same cistron, they cannot complement. Therefore, a cistron is synonymous to a gene and has therefore referred to as the smallest functional unit. I would like to just once again, before the conclusions, a small summary here again. So 4 strains, initially I said 1, 2, 3 and 4. So this is 1 and 2. Look at the mutations, the same diagrams which I have shown earlier. We are trying to use these two R21 and R22 strain co-infect on K12 lambda. If you are finding the presence of plaques, indicates the two mutations are in different genes. This is in gene A, gene B. The defect in gene A is complemented by the other mutant. The defect in gene B is complemented by the R21 mutant. And look at this diagram. It says R23 strain and R2 strain 4. These are again two different mutants, but whereas the mutation present here in this diagram, it shows that R23 carries a mutation in gene A and R24 carries a mutation in gene A as well, similar. In the both the mutants are carrying mutations within the small or the cistron gene A. So we are trying to co-infect on E. coli K12 lambda. In comparison to this figure, you can observe there are absolutely no plaques formed. So this is what? This is the smallest unit which cannot undergo complementation. So this is the same example. So when we said here you are saying you are infecting two different mutants and then you are finding the presence of plaques. How does that happen? The explanation for this reason is when such alignment of this gene, two non-complementing strains of viruses, this one can occasionally produce viral plaque if, what is the clause which is mentioned here? Here we are not seeing any plaques, but there is one amendment in case there is an intragenic recombination. These two mutations here, this within the gene A and again gene A. This is at the beginning of the gene, this is at the end of the gene. In case there is a recombination within the gene, intragenic, within the gene, and then you are trying to co-infect these two mutants on E. coli K12 lambda, the possibility is there. Look at this, it says rare phenomena, a very rare crossover. So suppose you are counting 1,000 plaques, maybe 2 to 3 plaques you will find in a co-infection of this kind of mutants. And if you find the presence of wild type, it is obviously understood. If this homologue is coming and picking up this mutant here, so that one homologue will give you both mutations in one of the chromosome and the other homologue will have absolutely none of the mutations. Thus, this will give you the wild type phenotype. But we will not be able to visualize these double mutants. Definitely we can see these wild type because they will form such plaques. So this I will be explaining now in our next topic, that is intragenic recombination. So what is this intragenic? Two non-complementing strains can produce plaques occasionally. And how does it happen? If they contain mutations in the same gene but at different positions, not exactly at the same position. So just on the previous slide, I have shown you one is at the beginning of gene A and the other mutation towards the end of gene A. So therefore, a rare crossover might occur between the two mutations within gene A, producing a double mutant. But the only disadvantage is we cannot physically or phenotypically identify these double mutants in the culture plate. But what we can strikingly observe indeed is the presence of these wild type progeny or the plaques. But understand that whenever the wild type plaques are present, there is also equal number of the double mutants which will be present. Perhaps it is not easy for us to distinguish them from the single mutants. That's the reason why we cannot visualize. But when we want to talk about recombinants, we need to double the number of wild type. Suppose there are 10 wild type plaques we have observed, then obviously there will be 10 double mutants, and both of these are as a consequence of recombination only for sure, thus producing progeny phages in E. coli K12 lambda. So the experimental design, he had originally taken R103 and R104 and mixed and co-infected on E. coli B progeny phages. So we know that from the table that any phage, whether it is a mutant or it is a wild type, they can infect E. coli B and the progeny phages are produced, eventually lysing the bacteria producing these plaques. So here, look at this experiment. This is R103. For a better understanding, we are using colors here. This is violet or blue in color, which carries a mutation in gene A. R104 is also another mutant, but with a different color we have designated here. And what is this color? You are seeing something orange or a brown color, which is also carrying a mutation in gene A. So these two are co-infecting E. coli B cells. So we know that both of them will happily grow. They will infect, multiply, form lot of progeny phages. After this, look at this here. What all we have taken here, same things. Again, we would want to subculture. These blue ones are here in this, which are R103. These brown or orange color R104 are also there. And you will find something new here. Look at this. This is the wild type phage. You are finding 1, 2, and 3. What about this one? There is a black color. And these are white or pale or rather gray in color. We have started with the violet color and the orange colored mutants. Now, when we have used for co-infection on E. coli B cells, we are after subculturing. We have taken the cultures from here and then put it on the bacterial lawn of E. coli B. What are we observing? This is E. coli B. So what do you get? We are finding this is only a colorful representation to make you people understand, which I just spoke saying that in case A rare recombination, intragenic recombination occurs between gene A here. Then we might find some wild type and also the double mutants. This is a pictorial representation which is not possible experimentally to visualize. So what have we taken? We have taken this culture and then infected onto E. coli B. And then you have diluted it to the 10 to the power of minus 4. This is again 10 to the power of minus 4. And then where did we? So this is what is more important. We are using the other culture. So this becomes our control and this becomes our test sample. So say from here you have taken some of the phages and infecting on E. coli B. lon, and from here you are taking it and growing them on E. coli K12 lambda. What is our result? You can see here. As we already know that on E. coli B, any phage can infect. So therefore, the total number of plaques which you will be observing is, counting everything, it gives you 66 plaques. On the contrary, these mutants, if they infect them and there is complementation between any two of the mutants, then only and only exclusively on E. coli K12 lambda, just the wild type will grow and not the single mutants. Here, everything will grow, single mutants, double mutants, wild type, everything. The difference in this plate and this plate is here exclusively only and only the wild type phages can grow. So this will be talking about the intragenic recombination. And I just mentioned that the number of wild type plaques, if it is 11, it is obviously understood that there are equal number of double mutants. So what I will do is, in order to talk about the number of recombinants, I need to multiply. So 2 into 11 will give me 22 plaques as the number of recombinants. The same diagram will contain some non-complementing predominant recombinants. However, occasionally they might contain intragenic recombinations. So this giving rise to double mutants as well as wild type. Now from this mixture of the phages, we had infected on two. One on the left side, which I just showed you earlier, on E. coli B, and then on E. coli K12 lambda. And when we looked at the count of the number of plaques, so here the frequency of recombination can be determined by comparing the number of wild type plaques, phages, which are observed on E. coli K12 lambda. So this is our control. The total number of plaques becomes 66 and the number of recombinant plaques were 11, that is the wild type phage. So how do you try to find out the distance between? So the presence of wild type plaques clearly indicates that the double mutants were also produced. Hence, we say that the double mutant of the wild type gets double the number. So 2 into 11 into 10 to the power of 6, what dilution did we take? So that we have written here, and this is 66 plaques which we said. If we were to take a lesser concentration like 10 to the power of 6 for the growth, to check the growth on E. coli B, then we will find a very large number. So we have taken a higher dilution in order for the ease of computation. However, so therefore, I am still considering the dilution factor in order not to mess up with the calculation. So when you compute this, you will find that this is how the calculation goes. So 3.3 recombinants were produced per 1000 phages. So if two mutations were located at the same position in a single gene, co-infection cannot absolutely yield any wild type recombinants. Then the distance between these two mutations which were there within the same gene would be 0. But because we found some 3.3 number of recombinants, he said that the physical distance between the two mutations which are present in the single gene were not at the same position but at different positions which are physically separable by recombination. Our understanding of genetics says that unless and until there is a physical distance between any two genes, it does not facilitate recombination. So, hence, after his contribution for the definition of the smallest functional unit as cistron, the smallest unit, because intragenic recombination is just revolving around the concept of recombination. So, he said that the smallest unit which possibly can participate in a crossing over or can undergo recombination as the recon, in short. Re and con, re for recombination. So he is happily able to define for our convenience a better way to understand the fine structure of the gene. Earlier, we thought gene is a big stretch of the fragment of DNA and it spans to a very larger distance. Well, that is indeed true, but this whole length of the gene is said to be made up of smaller subunit, which we are defining them as the cistron, as recon, and now let us see what are we going to define as the third one. If we were to map all the mutations which are present in this rapid lysis gene and based on recombination study, we will have to take all the 100 or 1000 R2 mutants and do all permutation combinations of crossing over, and that would be a Herculean task. Just to avoid with this, his experimental studies and his experience, what struck to him is why can't we use a strategy called deletion mapping? So he resorted to another technique, not just by recombination mapping, but also to another shortcut or an easier method of deletion mapping, which was used by Benzer to map the mutations which were present in gene A or gene B, as the R2 locus was said to be a fairly bigger gene. So hence, what did he do? To know the location. Now I would want to know where is the presence of this R103 mutation. And how should I go about? E. coli K12 lambda is co-infected with R103 and a deletion strain. Our definition of deletion strain says that a deletion strain is one which carries a part of the gene which is deleted. So when I would want to co-infect this R103 and a deletion strain, and keeping in our mind the concept of complementation. If the mutation in R103 is lying in the deletion region, I would repeat, if the mutation which is existing in R103 is lying in the deletion region of this some X deletion strain, will there be a recombination or will there be a complementation? Well, because both of them are so therefore the strategy of deletion mapping, in case our R103 and the deletion strain, both of them are having a mutation in the region of the deletion strain, then there is no possibility of complementation. So here I am showing you, this is the deletion, the plate recombinants on E. coli K. Here This is the point of the mutation here, and the deletion. This is the deletion mutant, and this is the other one. So if with the two different mutation, one containing a point mutation, the other a deletion to allow for a recombination. So if you want to check whether there is the mutation here in this case is what I'm talking about, R103. So this and this part of the deletion, just check they don't belong. This region, this mutation in R103 is not falling in the deletion region. So there is no overlap. So when we want to co-infect these on E. coli, plate it on E. coli K, it will definitely form the flux. But on the contrary, this is the deletion region, and if my R103 mutation was said to be present in this, in the deletion region itself, then there is no possibility, there is no complementation between the two, because neither this strain is going to give you the functional copy of the mutation, nor this mutation which is present here is having the functional copy on the other deletion strain. So there is no complementation which is taking place, hence you would not find the presence of plaques. So we're using this strategy in his mind. Each deletion strain is a T4 far that is missing a known segment of the R2A or R2B. If the deleted regions includes the same region that contains the R103 mutation, a co-infection will not yield ultragenic wild type recombinants, and we will not find the presence of plaques, which you can see on the right side plate. So this diagram illustrates better to talk about that in a very short span of time. By just using the strategy of deletion mapping, we can easily resolve the cumbersome or the complicated process of recombinational mapping, which would otherwise need so many pairwise combinations. However, if a deletion strain recombines with R103 to produce a wild type Faj that indicated that the deletion region does not fall in the region where the R103 is carrying the mutation. Hence, the results show that wild type recombinants were produced on co-infection with three strains PB242, A105 and 638. These three, when R103 were infected with co-infection with these three, R103 and PB242 is one, R103 and A105 is the other one, R103 and 638 strain. When we are co-infecting, what are we observing? We are observing the presence or the formation of the wild type plaques, indicating that these three mutants, deletion strains, are not having the same kind of a mutation which is present in R103. So the position of the mutation in R103 is different from the deletions which are present in these three strains. But no wild type recombinant. So here it is giving the wild type, but when you are doing a pairwise study with other deletion strains like PT1, J3, 1241 and 1272, no wild type recombinants were produced, indicating that this R103 mutation is lying in the deletion region of all these four strains. Hence, there is no complementation. So, co-infection with these two produced recombinants, but with this did not. R103 mutations must be located in the region that is missing in PT1 but not missing in PB242. And therefore, this region was called as A4 region because it is in the A gene, and this is the region number 4. But not in the other regions which were dividing the gene A into 6 cisterns: A1, A2, A3, A5 and A6. So the position of R103 lies exclusively in the A4 region and definitely not A1, A2, A3, A5 and A6 as well as the second cistern B. So let us look at the figure so that you will understand better. So here we have, this is the deletion region, the orange regions, and look at the violet ones. This shows this is the wild type allele without any deletion, all the functional copies. So here you can see at the bottom A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, A6 and the region B for rapid lysis gene. So what did we come down? Suppose I used all these and I said that R103 lies in A4. So which means to say that this 638 is carrying a deletion from here to here. So when I'm asking or I'm using co-infection of R103 with R638, 630 is having a functional copy of A4. That's why the mutation in R103, this is complementing. Similarly, RPB242 I said. So this also, look at this A4 region. This is also carrying the functional copy of A4. So therefore, there was a complementation. So these deletions, so whenever we do such deletion co-infection, the R2 tester strains we are using against our desired mutants, we can easily find out that whether our mutation is lying in this region or not. So that is how we have narrowed down that our R103 mutation lies in the A4 region. The other 1272, 1241 and J3, there is no formation of the wild type. That is what we said, because in J3 this region is deleted, 1241 this is deleted, 1272 this is deleted. So it can't give any complementation and no wild type plaques will be formed. This diagram is talking about the level of organization of the presence of where are these mutations present and ultimately at the chromatin level, gene level. So thus the mapping strategy localized R2 mutations to one of the 6 regions. 6 of these were in R2A and 1 region in the R2B region. There were 24 mutations which were mapped using the region A5D. A position, whenever we find that in one particular region of a gene there are too many mutations. As far as our knowledge goes, we know that mutations are events which happen over a long period of time and the rate of mutation is not very high. It is over a long millions of years time it takes for a mutation to establish in a population. So this mutation, but you find that there is a certain region which is frequently accommodating mutations every now and then. So such sites within the genome of an organism is referred to as a hotspot. So Benzer's study has established that the smallest unit of a gene that can undergo mutation is named as muton and its consequences can be phenotypically observed. Thus, Benzer's analysis of the fine structure of the gene demonstrated that each gene consists of a linear array of small units. What are the small units? Those small units which a gene is said to be made up of, and these small units were known as the cistron, and the property of the cistron is that These sites can be altered by mutation, recombination, and they can undergo recombination. Thus, this contradicts the bead theory of classical genetics, which held that recombination could take place between genes but not within genes. That was the classical concept. But now with intragenic recombination, we are successfully able to say that gene is more complex than what we are thinking. So this is the mapping of the R2 gene, which you are able to see here. So this is the region where it contains many mutations exactly at the same time within the gene. So these are the regions which contain many mutations exactly at the same site within the gene, and we call that this region as a hotspot. You can see there is one more hotspot here, and this is how the whole of the R2 gene was mapped, and this is the R2A gene which is starting from here extremely, and this is the from here we are starting the R2B gene. And look at the hotspots which are depicted by triangles. There are many regions in this which are having hotspots. So with this, we come to the end of fine structure analysis of the gene. And here there is a small exercise for you people to understand how comfortable you are with deletion mapping. So this is the diagram which is showing these are 4 deletions which are there, and we would want to check out where is the position of point mutations A, B and C. So 3 strains which are named as ABC and 4 deletion strains which are carrying regions of mutations in this way. These are the deleted regions. So look at this, minus, minus, plus, plus. That means plus indicates complementation. That means the mutation which is present in A is not present in this region. So where is D3? Let us check this D3. So this is the region of mutation. There is a deletion in this. So definitely the mutation might be present outside. Check out with this one D4. What is the, where is the mutation in D4? Look at this. This is the total region of deletion. So our A mutant is having deletion which is in this, the mutation lies in this region, that is in the 3 region. So A is having a mutation in this 3 region which D3 and D4 are able to complement. Similarly for B against D1, what is D1? D1 is this. This whole is deleted. And B is showing complementation. It is showing complementation. This is deleted till here. That means the mutation in B is not in region 1 and 2. It must be in 3, 4 and 5. Let us check out which region. So B is, when it is with deletion mutant D2, it is carrying a mutation from here to here. The whole of this region is deleted. That means either the mutation in B is lying in this region or in this. But if you say it is lying in this region, earlier in D1 it carried a deletion. So it should be showing plus, minus, sorry. But it is showing plus, indicating it is not this region. So where is this? D3 is this. So probably in this region. Let us check out D4. D4 is whole of this region. D4 is whole of this region. How do we determine now? Is it region 5, region 4, region 3? Out of these three, which one? I think it is region 4. 3 is this region, 4 is, D4 is the whole of this. D2 is minus. So when we are seeing B, that means there is no complementation with D2. So is it in this region? So we'll have to decipher. So this kind of analysis of deletion mutant. So you can work out such problems for better understanding. Thank you for your kind attention. I hope the talk was informative. I try to make it as simple as possible. Thank you for your kind and patient hearing.